Good morning and welcome to another program, the Veterans Forum, where we have been had the pleasure and the honor of talking to and with veterans of all the wars, from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, you name it. Any guy and gal who served in any of those branches, in any of those wars, we ask if you can and will come and share that experience with us in this program. This is part of the national program under the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. And as I said, you don't have to be Audie Murphy or a hero, but every guy and gal who had a job to do, they did it. And what we're trying to do is record that history that was made by the people who did it. And that's what it's all about. We all had a job to do, and some of us had a good time, some of us had a bad time. But the important thing is we're sharing it, not just for ourselves, but for the people coming after. Now, I don't know how many times we've had kids, grandkids particularly, say, hey, Grandpa, what did you do in the war? Well, not being a smart ass, not being overly excited, I asked him, okay, which war are you talking about now? Since I was in World War II, there have been 5 or 6 major battles since then, and each one of them was important. Well, the one you were in. Well, I kind of thought for a moment. I gave him a general story. I didn't capture some of the stuff that I will never talk about, and every one of us has those kinds of memories, I'm pretty sure. But the best thing was, and it's silly, but every guy that I've talked with after the show said, God dang it, Bob, I feel better because I had that in the back of my mind for all these 50, 60, 70 years. And it may be, cathartic or anything, but it helped take the pressure off, but more important, it helped fill in the puzzle. If my example has always been, I was told during World War II, for example, there were some 16 million guys and gals serving all around the world, each doing their particular thing. About 2 years, 3 years later, I got an update on the information from one of the actuarials down at the Congress, saying that at that time they estimated there were maybe 2.5 to 3 million guys and gals left. That didn't sound too bad, but then he said, no, the only problem with that is we're fighting the clock and the calendar. You see, they're dying now at the rate of anywhere from 12 to 1,500 a day. That means guys like us aren't going to be around much longer. And same for you. I'm not hanging crepe, but if you have a story to tell and you've been wondering to do it, this is the place we hope that you can and will come forward. Now today, Herk is going to give you some of his stories. Now, it's a wonderful thing, but he's just one more piece in that puzzle. The more we fill it in, the better the picture will be for the guys and gals coming after us. Herk, you're on. If you will, give us your name, rank, and serial number and dates of service stuff.
Okay, my name is Herk Streitburger, and I have a nickname, Herk. I went into the service February 14th, 1941. The reason I remember that was it was Valentine's Day. I was in the second draft, and I was discharged in August of 1945, so I put 4.5 years in the service.
What was your rank at discharge?
A technical sergeant. I had been a radio operator and a gunner on the B-24 Liberator bomber.
What Air Force?
The Army Air Force, the 15th Air Force, flying out of Italy. They originated in North Africa, and then they moved into Italy. And when we got over there, the main targets were in the Balkans. We raided the Ploesti oil fields where Hitler was getting most of his oil. We did Austria, France, Bulgaria, all the Balkan countries. We didn't go to Greece. But Romania was a rough target where they had where the oil fields were.
Ploesti.
Ploesti.
Yeah.
This was heavily defended by Hermann Goering's fighter group, and they had a tremendous amount of the best cannon in the World War II was the German 88 millimeter cannon. It was anti-tank and anti-aircraft. It was most accurate.
Wow. That sets the stage as to what happened. Now, I'd like to go back and find out where did you come, where were you born, how was life growing up, that kind of stuff, so that we can get a history of where you are and how you got to be there.
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My father died when I was 5 years old. My mother took my sister and I. Sister was only 6 weeks old then. She had come from Germany. So we went back to Germany, and I started school there. That's where I learned my German. Then, of course, we came back again to Philadelphia, and I took on a sickness at that time called leg-palsy disease. I was a cripple for a while. So I took several years to straighten out. And finally, we wound up in, my mother remarried. We wound up in Brooklyn, New York. And from there, when I was 21, was when the second draft took place. The first draft was in September of 1940. See, we knew that something was going to happen with Japan and Germany eventually. But anyway, I was drafted the second time, wound up in Texas in an anti-aircraft outfit, and when Pearl Harbor occurred, they rushed us with our equipment out to San Diego, not knowing what the Japanese were going to do. Of course, it was very dull and boring. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be in the service, I may as well get a little adventure and make some more money. So I took the aviation cadet exam. I passed it, and I wound up in the Army Air Corp at the time.
Yeah.
And I learned to fly. I soloed, went on to another plane, which was a little heavier, and it was an accelerated course, and I washed out, which shattered me. But I think I still wanted to fly, so I was able to join a bomber crew. I had gone to gunnery school, and the bomber crew consisted of 10 men. We were on a B-24 Liberator bomber, and it was we trained in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and Charleston, South Carolina. And finally, we went up to Mitchell Field, Long Island, New York, and we picked up a brand new B-24, and we flew what they call the Southern Route, New York, Miami, Trinidad, Belém, Brazil over to Dakar, South Africa up to Tunisia, Marrakesh, and over to Lecce, Italy, where we were finally based.
Wow, in one word, wow. Now, that's quite a span of time, but can you fill in some of the stuff that you did as a youth, if you will? You know, how you went to school, or with any of your friends in the service with you? When and where did you actually get into time?
Well, as I say, it was February 14th, 1941. I went with a fellow named Gus Grady, who had been living with me, and we wound up in Texas. He went into the medical corps, and of course, I was in the anti-aircraft artillery. And then a very good friend of mine, he went to the South Pacific, and he was there for quite a while. But well, I think it's a story. When I got out of the service, a buddy of mine who I'd been in the anti-aircraft group with, one day said to me, he says, "Herk," he says, "you going with any girl right now?" I said, "No, no." He says, "Would you like to meet a nice girl?" I said, "Sure." So anyway, I met my wife on a blind date through Charlie Tuttle. And as a little aside story, he and I met February 14th, 1941, Valentine's Day. When we got out of the service, I lived out in Long Island, New York, and then I moved up to New Hampshire. He lived in St. Albans, Long Island. But every 14th of February, every Valentine's Day, we contacted each other to say hello.
Do you send him a Valentine?
No. He's since passed away, but
oh, that's bad.
I continued calling his wife. She's passed away. Now I call his two sons. Wow. Every Valentine's
Just keep
Day.
It going.
Keep it going, right, yeah. Keep the pot boiling.
Now, again, I'm going to go back, fill in some of the blanks. When you first went in, boot camp and that sort of, how did you get there, and what was your life like the first couple of weeks? Anything spectacular, funny, sad, or whatever?
Well,
we all had stories about it.
Oh, that's right. Well, of course, having been a draftee and from New York, and the New York area, then they called you a New York City slicker. They sent us to a regular Army outfit, Sea Battery, 69th Coast Artillery Anti-Aircraft. Well, we automatically had 3 strikes against us when we were, first of all, they were regular Army, we were draftees. We were Yankees, we were Northerners, we were city slickers, and so they gave us rough duty. Oh, man, but it was good discipline.
Now, what was rough duty, for example, other than KP?
Well, double timing,
Okay.
exercises, or just giving you a dirty job, period. You know?
Toothbrush to clean the deck.
Right.
Okay. Any particular memories of your DIs, your sergeants, whoever was instructor? A lot of fellas say, they weren't like the Hollywood types, but some of them were.
Yeah. Well, I remember this Sergeant Paul Ridinger. He was a regular Army man. He was a Texan, but he kind of respected us. He shared things with us, and let's put it this way: you're learning discipline, and that's what sustains you for your military career, as a POW, and in civilian life.
Yeah.
Whatever disciplines you had, it helps shape your life.
Oh, yeah. And each one builds upon the other.
Right,
That's
absolutely.
the good thing. But
Right.
you only get that thing called experience by having lived through it.
Right.
One of the guys said, the only thing I can't give my grandkids is experience.
Right.
They got
Absolutely.
my house, my car, my stamps, and all that.
Right.
But I can't tell them
Yeah.
that they have to go through it.
Right, yeah.
But you try to guide them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, when you were training, did you have any particular desire as you went from the artillery into the Air Corps?
Right.
You gave us a quick preview of that. What was the real situation? How did you come by wanting to make the change?
Well, as I say, we were in San Diego, California. We had set up our guns in Balboa Park. And that was it, period. I mean, we had drills and all that, but there was nothing else to do. And I thought, well, this war is going on, and the Air Corps appealed to me. I thought, well, why not? I don't take the test. So I did, and then fortunately I passed it. And so it was a good transition. Because first of all, excuse me, again, the discipline I had learned either from school or from the regular Army going into the Air Corps, it just prepared me for life, for the military life as I went on. And as I say, my biggest disappointment, though, was when I had washed out. I had soloed on what they call the PT-19A primary trainer. Then you have what they call the BT-13A, the basic trainer. That was a heavier plane. It's accelerated, and I couldn't keep
They're
up
all
with it.
prop driven?
All
Way back when.
Oh, right.
Now, I've got a question. You said when we were talking that you had some sort of a malady with your legs. Didn't that anyway surface when you're going through any of your medical tests?
No, it didn't. It was at that time they called it Legg-Perthes disease, and it was a lack of certain vitamins in your foods. And then they were unconscious of
Vitamins and all that good
vitamins,
stuff?
so on and so forth. But anyway, I outgrew it.
Good.
So, and it didn't affect me. In
never
high
came back
school,
on
I
it.
was in track team and all that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's pick up again. Where and when did you said you picked up your crew and then you took off along the southern route. What was that like as far as being able to, you were a gunner at that time, navigator? Or
I was a gunner.
Okay.
Right, yeah. A little quirk. When we were in Belém, Brazil, this is the jumping off point for Africa. They called them the radio operator and the navigator, and they gave them special codes because the Germans cleverly had submarines in that South Atlantic, and they used to send out false signals. And if the navigator and the radio operator weren't alert, they could follow that till they landed in the sea because they ran out of gas. But the codes took them straight across to where they landed. We landed in Dakar, in Africa.
Now, when you took off, did you have any extra tanks? Like some of the fellas said they had extra belly tanks or something like that.
No, we did.
You just to take off and go from
We
Brazil,
just,
to the Azores, and then into Africa.
right, yeah.
How was the trip?
Wasn't bad. Very boring for us. Just nothing
No
else to do.
hostesses, huh?
Nothing else to do. Read comic books.
Studying for officers. Okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you land when you first hit Africa? Before you took off into Italy? How was it? Was any training going on?
Oh,
the route?
no. It was strictly traveling.
Okay.
Strictly traveling.
Point to point.
Point to point. But at one point, though, we had to lay over a couple of days, so that the engineer had to service the engines, because the long flights overseas, they wanted to make sure it was a brand new plane.
They had to wear it in, yeah.
They were breaking in properly, and so we laid over a couple of days while they changed the oil and all that, made adjustments.
Now, did you ever get when you down? Did you have a chance to go on? I'll call it liberty or leave into some of the local towns?
They wouldn't let us go.
Wouldn't let you go.
We did go to, I think it was a little restaurant in Tunisia someplace, and I remember we had to wait about 2 hours while they were cooking the food, and you couldn't order anything. Just brought you a plate of food.
Excuse me.
And,
I turned this thing off. I'm sorry.
That's all right. They brought a plate of food, had eggs on it and spinach and whatnot, and that was it, period. And some of the guys couldn't eat it because it was too foreign to them.
Oh?
But then they took everything back because they were going to recycle it.
Rewarm it.
Right, absolutely.
If your 12 in line is 3 days old.
Right, absolutely.
Oh. Any bearing as far as having anything to drink with it? Beer, wine, liquor, and so forth? None of that problem?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then when you made the big jump over into Italy, where did you land and what started you on your career?
We landed down in a town called Lecce, Italy, which was down on the heel of the boot, if you can visualize Italy itself. And that's where we were stationed. I was what they call the 343rd Bomb Squadron of the 98th Bomb Group of the 15th Air Force. And that was our permanent station. Whatever targets we were going, we took off from there.
Okay. Now, were you the only group there, or was that a big marshalling area?
It was a marshalling
like
area.
Fuji.
Yeah. Fuji was a little bigger. Yeah. There was like sort of a
I keep
central
hearing
head.
that word, and I'm trying to figure where along the boot it was.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It was right close to the Adriatic Sea. And anytime we took off, we either flew up the Adriatic or across the Adriatic, because this way you got away from the flak guns if there was any around.
Where along the Balkans?
Right, yeah.
I've heard about those.
Oh, yeah.
They're clever.
They're clever, is right.
Okay. Now, when you were flying and so forth, trying to get a picture of it, you would take off 1, 2, 3 at a time, and then rendezvous, and then head.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, were you guys ever the lead ship?
No, we never were the lead ship. No. That was the high-ranking officers who had that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See, our pilots were like lieutenants, and the highest rank was captains. The big wigs were all colonels, lieutenant colonels, and whatnot.
But they had to start someplace.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything special about those? Now, some of the guys who were navigators would say that after a while you'd go up and down the line, and they got pretty comfortable. They could tell you where they were just by some of the profiles of the lands and so forth. As a gunner, you'd have to look out the windows, if you will. Anything like that? Did you have a spot that made you feel good on the way back or the way out?
We were on, in fact, I believe it was my 5th mission. We had flown up to Bolzano, Italy, which is at the foot of a 10,000-foot mountain range. And if I can just read that for you quickly.
You've got it all here, buddy.
Okay. Mission number 5, March 30th, 1944, Bolzano, Italy, marshalling yards. Flew up the Adriatic Sea and then into the target. Me-109s, its German fighters, drove through the overcast to attack us. Tail gunner got a probable. P-38 chased them away. Started our bombing run when intense and accurate flak burst around us, our formation. Luckily, none touched us. Our right wingman was hit in the bomb bay. Fire started immediately and spread to the wing tanks. Left wing broke off, the entire plane engulfed in flames. Plane went into a violent spin, no one got out. I couldn't bear to look anymore. It was the most horrible sight I'd ever seen. May God have mercy on their souls. We learned later that the mountains nearby were 10,000 feet high, and that's where the Germans had their anti-aircraft guns.
You get another altitude right off the bat.
Right, yeah. And later on, I'll tell you what that influenced me to do.
Okay, I can hardly wait. Now, you got a couple of pictures. I'd like to show you your mascot and give the story on that little guy
Okay.
and his buddy.
This was our
You can look at it right there next spot yourself.
this
Good.
was our bombardier. His name was Vernon Huff. And when we were flying through Africa, we picked up a little monkey, which we called Wilbur. He was our mascot. And Vernon Huff took care of them. I'm kind of jumping my story ahead of time.
Some of the stuff we got to lead into, I think.
Okay, fine. You want me to wait?
No, it's your story. You
Okay,
do it
okay.
as you will.
On our last mission, when you flew 50 missions or you accumulated 50 points, when you finished that, you could come home to the States and sell war bonds. Our target was Vienna, Austria, which was heavily defended by fighters and anti-aircraft planes, guns. Over the target, we were hit by anti-aircraft shells and 2 engines were knocked out. As a result of that, you fall behind. You cannot keep up with the formation. We were able to drop our bombs, but then we were able to, the formation continued, and we did the best we could, and we managed to get as far as Hungary. And yeah, the German fighters came in and finished us off. And we usually using our guns too to defend ourselves, but to no avail. Now, there were 11 men on the crew. 9 survived. Now, the sad story is, since it was our last mission, the day before, one of our gunners, Jim Catron, had finished all his missions. See, in other words, you never flew with the whole same crew every day. Sometimes you became a substitute someplace else where someone had finished their missions. So anyway, Jim Catron, the day before, had finished all his missions. And so we had a substitute gunner named Nicholas Kish. It's the first time he ever flew with us. He flew in the nose. Well, on the B-24 Liberator bomber, it's a tri-wheel landing gear. The front nose wheel that comes up into the plane and 2 slats cover it up. Now that also is wide enough as an escape hatch for the people in the front. In the front you had the tail gunner, the navigator, and the bombardier. I'm sorry, the radio operator. But anyway, the excitement when it came time to bail out, Nick Kish could not find his parachute. Incidentally, we all wore what they call a harness, and there were 2 hooks on there. The parachute was separate, so you had just hooked it on if you had to bail out. So anyway, we feel that in the excitement, his parachute might have been put on those escape hatches, and when the lever was pulled to open the hatches, we think the parachute fell out so that he could not find it. Ooh. And so unfortunately, he went down with the plane. The bombardier also went out. His name was Vernon Huff, as I said. And after we were all captured, they brought in the Mae West, which is a bright yellow inflatable life preserver. They brought that in, and it was all bloodied. And we were able to determine it belonged to Vernon Huff, our navigator. Now, we assumed at the time that the the peasants had killed them because it was June 26th. It was the summertime. People were out in the fields tilling the soil, and they saw all of a sudden these parachutes coming down. So we assumed that's what happened. Later on, we did find out, though. Unfortunately, his chute was not hooked up properly, and he fell out of his chute. I showed his picture with the monkey. This is kind of a gruesome picture. This was Vernon Huff when they brought his body in. And incidentally, this is the plane, the remains of our airplane.
Can you hold it still so they can get a good shot? There. Okay. Thank you.
So anyway, out of the 11, 9 of us were captured, and we were then taken to a small village, which we assumed was the mayor's house. And they held us there for a while. Then they took us by horse and wagon to a train station where we were heading for Budapest, Hungary. But before we got there, they made another stop overnight, marched the 9 of us into what we assumed was a soldier's barracks. And they lined us up against the wall. We had to face the wall, and we were what they call a parade rest position, where you're standing straight and your arms are behind your back. The soldiers had their bayonets mounted, and we were told you can't move. Well, 18 hours is an excruciating time for it to stand that way. What gave us strength was our co-pilot, Paul Stillions. Some way when he landed, either hit some rocks or what, but he either severely sprained or broke his ankle. They wouldn't give him any attention. I thought to myself, my God in heaven, if he can bear it with his pain, we certainly can bear it without pain. So that's what happened.
No medical attention whatsoever?
No, not until afterwards. But anyway, it's a funny thing there. You know, I'm a tall guy. I was 6 feet. This Hungarian officer came in. He was kind of a shrimp. And he's looking up at me. And he's jabbering away in Hungarian. I don't understand him. He's jabbering away. So anyway, every time he came in, he booted me in the rear end, slapped me in the face, because I guess he figured, I'm a short guy, but I'll show a tall guy like you what can do.
Complex.
Right. So anyway, the only relief we could get was we'd say we had to go to the bathroom. So they'd let us go into this little latrine. But after the 18 hours, they finally let us sit down, and then they did bring a first aid man, and he bandaged up Paul Stillions' leg. And I understand he did end up in a German hospital where they treated him. And finally from there, we got on another truck, and another train took us into Budapest, Hungary. And there, you saw the result of bombing. Now, we were in an open truck, and as we were driving by, the people saw us. Well, they come running out from all over. They wanted to get a hold of us. They wanted to lynch us, but the Germans would not let them near us. So we finally wound up in this regular prison, and we had to give our name, rank, and serial number, and then they put us in a cell. And it was talk about an old prison. This fellow, Lou Staudenmeyer, and I, he was our ball tour gunner. He and I, we wound up in the same cell. About 5 minutes later, we started to itch. The bed bugs came out of the woodwork.
Oh.
It was horrible. But anyway, we were in there for 18 days. And they gave us what they call coffee in the morning, which is hot water with a shot of grease. And you got a little loaf of bread, and then you got some kind of porridge, and then with thin, watery soup, and that was it. And
One meal or
pardon me?
1 meal a day or?
No, it was 3 times a day.
Okay.
But it was so thin, it was like hot water. But anyway, finally, after the 18 days, they took us to let us shower, and they then took us to the train station and put us on board a boxcar. Well, as they say, there again, the people were there. They're trying to get at us. They were throwing stones at us. So 3 times we were almost lynched. So anyway, thank God I'm here today that they didn't get a hold of me. But at least the Germans were trying to adhere to Geneva Convention for the safe treatment of prisoners. So anyway, we finally, the train took off, and we didn't know where we were going. There were 26 of us in the boxcar. And our first stop was, guess what? was Vienna, Austria. I hear a couple of weeks before I had helped bomb Vienna, and now I'm underground again. All of a sudden, our air raid sirens went off. The Germans left us in the boxcar, and they went to the bomb shelters. Well, Vienna has what they call 2 marshalling yards. Marshalling yard is where they assemble all the boxcars into one train. And we, fortunately, I think we were in the southern marshalling yard, and the target was the north one. But anyway, during the bombing and everything, and the anti-aircraft shelling, we could hear shrapnel falling on the roof. And the German soldier showed me, my God in heaven, it was just sheer metal, all jagged, so I could visualize when it would hit a plane or an engine, what the damage it would do. So anyway, it taught me a lesson. Now, we finally took off again, and once or twice the train stopped, maybe for water, I don't know, but they would let us out to air, get a little air. And I had remembered some of the German I had learned when I was a kid, when I started school in Germany. So I started to talk with the guy. And he says, just hope that we don't go through Berlin. I said, why? What's in Berlin? He says, the women of Berlin look for POWs. Because if you recall seeing some of the pictures of Berlin, they bombed the living daylights out of it. The English came over at night, the Americans came over at day. And it was just a shell. Now the story is, I can't vouch for it, but the women found an English flyer floating down the parachute. They were able to grab him, tied his hand with wire, and just threw him into a burning building.
Ooh.
It's anger. It's the result of war. What else can you do? But then another funny thing happened.
That was funny?
No. I say, no, I'm not. No,
Oh,
it wasn't
okay.
funny. I'm sorry. No.
The words got me.
Yeah. At some point, we were stopped, and I don't know where it was. And the one thing that Germans could not understand about Americans was their sense of humor. We all know we have a sense of humor. And so anyway, now we're in this boxcar. It's still. So somebody says, why don't we sing some songs? So the 26 of us started singing, regardless of, I forget what it was, all the tunes that we knew. And all of a sudden, we heard singing come from a train next to us. It was a German troop train. But the sad part was, they were the voices of children. Now, in desperation, Hitler was taking all senior citizens and even children. And these little kids were trying to match us in singing. Now, as I say, there were 26 of us. And this,
I'll hold it.
if you were to count that, there are exactly 26 people in that picture there. And a friend of mine, he was an artist, and I told him what he drew that for us. So 26 of us.
So you were not the Vienna Boys Choir.
Right. But again, it's American humor. Now, finally, we reached our destination. Now, we had the same German guards as we came along. They were halfway decent. And so we got off the train, and it took about a 3-mile hike through the woods to get to the prison camp. But a strange thing we noticed. The ground was covered with American food wrappers like Nabisco crackers, Sun-Made raisins, chocolate, strictly the wrappers, not the food. And we couldn't figure, where did this come from? When we got to the camp, we found out what had happened. Previous to we getting there was a camp called Heidekrug, which is about 500 miles north, and the Russians were getting too close. So they decided to evacuate them. They put them in a ship, brought them down to some area in Germany, again put them in a boxcar, brought them to the same camp that we had. Now, when they got off the train, it's an altogether different story. They were handcuffed, two together. They had guards with snarling guard dogs. They had machine guns mounted, and the soldiers had bayonets mounted. And as soon as they got off, they double-timed them through the woods. And anyone who fell, they just kept pricking them with the bayonet. And of course, they were throwing anything they were carrying, they threw away, and that's where those parcels came. It was from Red Cross food parcels. That's all they had, but they saved themselves. They didn't try to kill them, just pricked them. So anyway, after we were in the camp, then succeeding groups of prisoners coming in, the same conditions. Some had to be carried in. They claimed that in our medical department, which is just a name, they saved a shirt from one GI. They claimed they had over 50 puncture holes in it. And some couldn't walk in. It was their buttocks, their back, and they just had the puncture. So they were saving the shirt for when the International Red Cross man would come to show them what was going on. Nothing ever changed. So anyway.
Did they actually get to see the shirt? The Red Cross guy?
Oh yeah, they showed it to him, but who knows what?
Yeah. No. Excuse me, go ahead.
So anyway, now, this was, see, I was shot on June 26th. This had to be sometime in June, sometime in July. Anyway, it was warm weather, and there were what they call 4 compounds. I was in A compound, A, B, C, and D. And there was mostly, there were American airmen, that is non-commissioned officers. There were some English, New Zealanders, Australians, but mostly there were Americans. And these were non-commissioned officers. So the Germans were very good at shooting our planes down. And so we did what we could to entertain ourselves. Fortunately, the Red Cross did send some musical instruments. We got some books from the Salvation Army, and occasionally we got what they call the Red Cross food parcel. Now, our country sent us enough food parcels for one man for each parcel a week, but the Germans very cleverly hoarded them in their warehouse, and they doled them out. Say, you never got a full parcel yourself. Sometimes it was 2 men to 1 parcel, 3 men to a parcel, 4 men to a parcel.
What was the content of the boxes, for example? Get some idea.
All right. Here we are.
Just happen to have a photograph.
That's up there.
Good, Key, that's good.
It had, there were cans of fish. There was a chocolate bar. There was some crackers. There was coffee. That was the instant coffee, but real coffee. There was margarine. There was some meat. And also, of course, it was fashionable to smoke cigarettes at that time. It was either 4 or 6 packs of cigarettes, all the popular brands.
How about toilet paper?
No, not the.
You had to connive that. Okay.
That's right, yeah. But anyway, the contents of the Red Cross parcel, as soon as I found out, what it was, I smoked, but I gave it up right away, because now I could trade the cigarettes for food for some guy who couldn't give it up. The same way with the coffee. But the Germans gave it, they called coffee, but it was a brown color, looked like coffee. It was made from acorns, no flavor whatsoever. And then later on, I'll get to that story.
Now, did they rifle the packages, or did they give it to you, then you could use that to barter back and forth?
No, you got the contents of the whole package, but all the canned stuff, before we got it, they had a stick with nail in it, and they punctured each one so you couldn't save it. You had to use it right away in case you wouldn't save it for an escape.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for a while, if, say, 50 cans of something were put out, you had to turn 50 empty cans.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they kept checking. So anyway, but that's where that food came from. And besides that, well, we used to get maybe a porridge in the morning, and again, same thing, watery soup in the afternoon, watery soup in the evening. And now I was what they call a barracks leader. In my compound, there were 10 barracks with 240 men in each barracks. So we had close to 10,000 men in that compound, that area there. Now, over a period of time, now we started to hear rumblings in the distance. So I asked one of the guards, oh yeah, I was what called a dolmetscher, an interpreter. I spoke German well enough. And I said to him, I said, what's that? He says, oh, that's an artillery school. That's artillery school on my foot. I said, you don't know how to shoot a cannon by now. It was the Russians. They were coming too close. So now, February 6th, we got the notice the day before. Have your men ready? We march out. Well, we knew something was going to happen because, as you said, with the rumbling and all. Oh, incidentally, we had some very clever boys in our group, radio operators. They were able to make a radio set. I don't know what it was made out of, but we got a BBC report, that's the British Broadcasting Company, which apprised us of the situation. Now, every day, during the day, somebody would meet me and give me a little piece of paper that was very finely pushed together, which I stuck in my pants. And then after we were locked up at 6 o'clock every night. As soon as they were locked up, I would go to the 10 rooms in the barracks and slowly read the report from the BBC. And at least we knew that, we were winning. So anyway, that's right, knowing that the Russians were getting closer. So again, I had an extra shirt, so I took it, and good material. So I did the tail. I folded back, sewed it across, and I took the sleeves and sewed them together, and left the opening with the buttons. And this was my knapsack for carrying my little personal belongings. Some of the fellows didn't have sense enough to do it, because when we finally marched out on February 6th, then now all of a sudden the Germans gave each man a full parcel, Red Cross parcel, and they couldn't carry it. They opened it up and they tried to stuff their pockets, and the rest had to throw it to the ground. So fortunately, I was able to stuff it in my little knapsack. Now, we marched from February 6th for about 86 days in the worst winter they had in that area. Whenever they could, the Germans, and they could get permission from a farmer, they put us in the barracks, a barn. And we'd sleep there overnight. If not, you had to sleep out in the field. Slept on the snow and ice. Each of us had 2 blankets. And you dared not take your shoes off, because if you did, your feet would swell up and you couldn't put your shoes back on. So, live and learn. Another thing, too, that was disgusting. For the type of food that they were getting, a lot of fellas came down with dysentery. Oh, that was sad. It was so sad to see some fella, as we were marching along, go out of line, lower his pants, and he had let it go. Another time, one fellow was wearing a towel as a diaper. Another time at night, one of the fellows was trying to get out of the barracks, out of the barn, to do his duty outside. And just before he got out the door, it all slipped out. It was pitiful. But again, these are the things that you had to put up with. So finally, we wound up at a camp called Fallingbostel, which was 11B. That was about 600 miles away. We hadn't marched that far.
You're going north at all times?
Yeah. So anyway, we were there that was a hellhole because it was an international place. And finally, we got the message again, pack your things, we're going out again. It seemed that the English and the Americans were getting too close. So, back we started to go. Now, 2 other fellows and I become buddies. And one time, we saw a P-51, which is an American fighter plane, circling around the area. Now, we didn't know whether they'd been strafing somebody or whether they knew we were POWs or we're a German column. So anyway, we made up a pact. Says, look, let's see if we can escape. We have a little bit of food with us. And also we knew that the Germans have what they call root cellars. These are huge piles of dirt where over the winter they buried potatoes, carrots, turnips, rutabagas, to keep in storage so we could dig into those anytime we saw them. So anyway, when they marched, you had a column of about 200 men, and in between each column was a horse and wagon filled with straw driven by a German soldier. They called it the sick wagon. This was some fellow who just absolutely couldn't walk anymore. Either he had tremendous blisters or what, and they put him on there. Now they had quite a distance in between. And the fact that they knew me as the interpreter, so one fella had him lay down on the ground, and I'm patting his head, and the German go by, what's the matter? I said, we're waiting for the sick wagon. Okay, he kept going. Well, it seemed that if you can visualize a big curve, this group was coming up, this group had just gone by. It was blank space, nobody could see us. We immediately picked up our things, rushed into the woods, and that's how we got away from the Germans. And therein lies another story. We were tired. It was pitch dark now, and we were kind of walking through a marshy, wet thing. We knew we couldn't lay down. But fortunately, we found a little incline, climbed up it, and it was flat, it was dry. So we put our blankets down and we went to sleep. And this is the comedy part. We woke up to the laughter of children. We were camped almost near a road, and evidently the children were going to school, and they're frolicking as children do. So we laid absolutely still until they got by. Well, as soon as they were out of sight, we grabbed our things and rushed back into the woods. Now, what do we do? So we thought, well, let's find some place near a road and we'll camp. Because, as I said, we had little Red Cross food and we had some of the stuff from the dry cellars. So we found a little space that was clear but surrounded by bushes. So I thought, this is a good place. We'll pitch a little camp here. We made a tent out of one of the blankets. And I had, over a period of time, had traded with some people for some dried beans. See, again, the few cigarettes we had was a good trading thing. If I was talked with a German Hausfrau or housewife, I'd say, how would you like a nice good cup of coffee? So I give her a quarter of a teaspoon in hot water. She loved it. She said, my God, I haven't had this in a long time. And she gave us a few eggs, so on and so forth. But anyway, that's how we passed our time. Now, it's either the fifth or sixth day, as it's getting dark, a tremendous firefight started someplace. We could hear the machine gun bullets flying overhead. We even thought we heard rockets. And it lasted all night. We thought, my God in heaven, I just hope they stay away from us. So finally, it stopped the next day. Now we thought, well, let's find out what's going on. So while we're sitting there in our little area that was obstructed, we heard German voices, and there was a single column of German soldiers walking along. Of course, not knowing we were there, they couldn't see us, so we kept absolutely still. So after they passed by, we said, okay, let's go out and find what's there. So I know it's hard to believe, but three of us walked out, and we bumped into a German officer. And we had made up our minds that in the event we were confronted by the Germans, we'd tell them the truth. We're escaped prisoners of war. So anyway, fortunately, I recognized the German officer. He has like a gray uniform, which told me he was a regular army. This is what they call the Wehrmacht. The SS army, that was Hitler's goon squads. They were the sadists, they were the killers. But the regular army tried to observe the Geneva Convention. So anyway, as soon as the officer saw us, he pulled his pistol out, and but he didn't aim it at us. He kept it towards the ground. So I explained to him exactly who we were. I said, "Who's out there?" He says, "Tommies." Tommies is the English expression for British troops. I said, "Oh, okay." So now I became a salesman. I said to him, I said, "When was the last time you tasted a real cup of coffee and a good cigarette?" He said, "A long sight, a long time." So I said, "Come with us." And then I gave him a cigarette, lit it for him. And fortunately, we had a little tin can of water on a little fire simmering. So we came to our little camp. I fixed him a cup of coffee. Oh, he savored that. He says, "I haven't tasted this in a long time." So he seemed friendly enough. So I kept feeding him coffee and cigarettes. So then I took a chance. I said, "Look, you know as well as I do this war is almost over. Why don't you surrender to us? We will go into meet the Tommies and we'll tell them you treated us decently." And no, he says, "I have to get home." He says, "You go that way where the Tommies are, and I'm going this way." So we shook hands, wished each other luck, and then the three of us gathered our belongings together, and we very gingerly, we had an old dirty towel which we put on a stick, and we huddled together, and we marched towards where the Tommies were. And all of a sudden, halt! And sure enough, two English soldiers jumped out of the bushes, and we identified, "Oh, Yank, come on in." Took us, fixed some eggs which we hadn't ages, and he said, "We'll get you back to to the Americans." Now, a strange thing happened. They put us on a Jeep, and so we're pulling away. I looked back at the woods where we had been hiding for 6 days. Now, all of a sudden, I felt a tremendous fibrillation, vibration in my chest. It wasn't painful. I had never had it before, and I haven't had it since. So when I finally did get back to the Americans, I was talking with the psychiatrist. He said, "You know what happened? Your adrenaline had stopped flowing. You've been living on the edge for almost a year, not knowing, somebody owned your body. At least they didn't own your mind." And I bought it. It made sense to me because, not knowing, like, for example, even in the camp, they have what's called a guardrail. If you're playing ball and the ball went past that little rail, you couldn't go over it because there were watchtowers with machine guns. They'd shoot you. You had to call a regular German soldier. He'd come over, he'd motion to the guard, and let you could go in and get your ball. So these were the things that you're always on edge for.
Always on edge, yeah.
Always on edge, Joe. So anyway, but that was the sum and substance of it. Another time, we were on while we were on the march, we came to some kind of a farm village, but they had this huge, like a silo thing, and there's a trough at it. I found out it was an animal trough where the pigs and cows and whatnot. All of a sudden, a chute opened up, and a whole bunch of steamed hot potatoes fell down. Well, here we are, eating out of an animal trough, but it was the first hot food that we had in months. It tasted good, so I figured, you forget your pride, and that was it. Another time, and this is when I couldn't do it. See, every German farmyard had like a little cookhouse where I don't know what they cooked in there, whether it was for the animals or what, but they had a huge boiler. And so one of the soldiers said, "I got some food for you." I said, "Yeah." He showed me the head of a horse. It was maggot-ridden. He says, "Why don't you make soup out of that?" To this day, I couldn't do it. It was just, maybe I wasn't hungry enough. Who knows? I don't know. But I always remember that. And the hot potatoes, that was delicious.
Good memories. Now, I have to cut you short, believe it or not. We're almost out of time, my
Okay.
buddy. Now, when you got back with the British and then they turned you over to the Americans, and then how did you get back home and when?
Well, as they say, they took us to Brussels, Belgium, where they deloused us. We got new uniforms. And from there we flew to Le Havre, France, where they have what they call Camp Lucky Strike. I found out I became a RAMP, R-A-M-P, Recovered Allied Military Personnel. And from there we took a troop ship to come home to America.
What kind of a troop ship? Was it a converted liner or just a regular body pass? Like an
No,
APA?
it was like I think it had been like a freighter.
Okay.
They had bunks in there, 3 or 4 high, But again, when you saw that Statue of Liberty,
that was the day, boy.
that was the day.
Now, condensing it a little bit, when you got home, how long before did you take advantage of the GI Bill, for example, go to school?
Oh, yeah.
Or get married and all that kind
Yeah.
of good stuff?
What I did was, after we landed in New York, I was able to go home immediately. We lived in Richmond Hill, Long Island, New York. So my mother and sister, my father had passed away, and from there, then I went to Atlantic City for R&R, rest and relaxation. They treated us like kings for 6 weeks, but that's where they brought all your old back pay back. Your records were brought up to record, and I was finally discharged.
Where and when? What day?
That was Camp Dix. No, I'm sorry. No. New Jersey. Oh, my God. I can't think of the name right now.
Okay, no sweat.
Camp Dix was out Long Island.
Yeah.
But anyway, I came home.
You good?
And
did you get married soon after
no,
that?
I didn't get married right away. Yeah.
Oh.
And I was very fortunate. I got a job with the Rheingold Brewery in Brooklyn, New York. And Loved doing that. Worked in Manhattan and Brooklyn for 20 years. Then in the meantime, finally I met my wife through the blind date. And I was also going to St. John's University under the GI Bill, studying marketing and sales. But then it came to the point where I couldn't do the both. But I liked the job so much, so I continued with the job. And I did about 20 years in Manhattan and Brooklyn.
As a salesperson? Or a
Salesperson, right, yeah. And then they sent me up I was promoted to a district manager in New England. And I came up and I serviced all the distributors in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Did some what they call missionary work in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut.
Okay, where was your station, your birth of operation from here in New England?
Oh, I worked out of my home.
Oh, where? Where was your home?
Oh, Bedford, New Hampshire.
Oh, I got to bring it up, Chamber of Commerce. Okay. Now, what have you been doing since then?
Well,
I'm not trying to squeeze you.
No. I'm retired 25 years now. And I joined an organization called SCORE. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
We're all retired business people, and we're the volunteer arm of the Small Business Administration, the federal agency. And what we do is we advise people on how to start up a business or people in business with a problem. We have workshops, and it's absolutely free to the...
It's a real consulting group.
Oh, absolutely right.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Another thing I became a member of, have you heard of Honor Flight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm
Amen.
on the board there with Joe Byron for New England. And I was on the original Honor Flight to Washington in June 16th, 2009.
It's a great experience, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. My two daughters paid their own way as a birthday present for me. One of them, she pushed me in a wheelchair around Washington. The other one, she arm-led a guy around.
Yeah.
But I keep busy.
Oh, yeah.
I will not let pressure get to me.
Let me ask you one question. With all that you've seen and done and so forth, what kind of experience or, shall we say, advice, if you want to use that word, you give some of these kids coming up today that may be on the cusp? What do they do that with the economy as it is? Join the service, take an advantage of what?
Well, a lot depends on what kind of discipline they have been subject to.
That's a dirty word.
I know it's a dirty word. I talked to several different schools, it's what they call the middle school, usually the 8th and 9th graders. And in Manchester, there's the Jewish school. I will be talking the 4th year in a row there. I talked to someone in Suncook and Londonderry. And I start out with the children this way. I say, it's hard to believe, but it is possible that among you group of children over here today could be some of the future leaders of our country. After all, that's where they come from. It's up to you. If you say, for example, we've just been through this big election. Do you like the Democrats, the Republicans? Have you watched the debates? If you think that appeals to you, volunteer. Go ahead and do something. And there's something else I always like to say. You're growing up, you're very impressionable. Number one, someone wants you to take a little pill because you'll feel good. Number two, smoke some cigarettes, you'll feel good. Drink some alcohol, you'll get high. Try some sex, and it's excellent. I said, don't let anyone ever coax you into that. There are 4 people you can trust. Number one, your parents. After all, they brought you into this world. They gave you life. They love you. There's your grandparents, grandma and grandpa. You are the children of their children. I know I have 4 children of my own and 7 grandchildren. I adore them. There isn't anything I would do to help them. I said, number 3, go to your teachers if you have a problem. After all, many are married. They have children of their own. They'll help you. And number 4, don't hesitate to go to a clergyman, either a priest, a rabbi, an imam, a pastor. I said, there are people there to help you. But don't be talked into by some guy who's already sunk to the ground and wants you to pull down so you can be miserable with him.
Amen. So all in all, is your experience in the service, has it been a positive or negative effect on what
Oh, I'd
you've
say
done?
positive.
Good.
Positive. The discipline, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I will not let pressure get to me. I refuse to accept it. Like today, I was wondering, should I call you or what? I said, no, I discipline myself. I made a promise. I will make it, period. But I will only portion so much of a day to doing something nonsensical or not.
Sounds like my own. Would you just explain, if you will, your air medal? You've got all sorts of medals here. Take
Well-
about 2 seconds, but I want people to see them.
Okay. This is the Air Medal. This is the XPOW medal.
No, that was that one there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, that XPOW medal. Then the others are for the Victory Medal, and of course the Good Conduct Medal. I was a good boy.
You mean you never got caught? Don't give me that.
Right. Then there's the American Victory Medal, and there's also the European African Victory Medal. So,
In 2 words, press the flesh. Thank you, and thank you for your service.
it's my pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you for your service.
Amen. That's a wrap-up, folks. Again, one guy who had a job to do, and he did it. But more important, he's used that experience to help some of the kids coming along. And they're the ones we're trying to answer a lot of the questions for. We're not recruiting anybody to go in any branch of service. But the words that most of us older guys kind of rely on is you learn to be respectful and pay attention to what you're doing. But most important, whatever you do, whatever your ilk in life is going to be, give it your best shot. Don't look for handouts, but make sure that you know what you're doing and you can do it. And to that point, again, if you have seen this program and enjoy it and have something to say, please come and see us. You'll have an address at the back of this program real quickly to tell you how to get a hold of me, Bob Stevens. I'm new to town, but I've been down the road a few times, and this is one of the biggest things that I've done in my lifetime, and I hope to keep doing it for a long time. We welcome you, and we'll do all we can to make you quiet and comfortable. Thank you for listening. Stay healthy.